It's
Here it comes.
Bram.
We are
And
live.
yes. Well, we are just going to skip that intro because it was being super glitchy. So, welcome everybody. We have
All right.
Mike and Matt and Chris Aldrich tonight. So, take it away, guys.
Kenzie, that's the most. So I've been branching out this show, and a lot of people that don't know anything about truck and tractor pulling and very little about media productions in general have been watching. A lot of my coworkers, and the question they asked me, they said, "What is Kenzie's role?" We never hear Kenzie talk. So that is it. You just you hit your quota for the month right there. So
I did. Yeah, I just make
give
stuff.
her a raise. So
she's working
Kenzie,
really hard behind the scenes, and
Kenzie on the mic. So
our guest here today will know about that.
Welcome to Let's Grow Pulling, our first Let's Grow Pulling in March. Matt has returned. Mr. Jason Schultz is not with us again tonight. I think he's at a choir concert. And Chris is at Aldrich. Are we saying that right?
That's it, Aldrich.
All right, Chris Aldrich is here with us. So before I introduce him proper, let me introduce him kind of with what the pulling world might know or might resonate with. And if there's any fans out there watching, please, drop us your comments and ask us any questions, but give us your feedback. If first of all, 2 words, Bowling Green. We all know exactly the significance of that. Need I say more? If you have perused the YouTube over the past 2 years and seen the Behind the Hook series, I've been calling it a documentary for a lack of a better term. Holy moly. If Bowling Green takes pulling to the next level, Behind the Hook takes the driver interview, the behind the scenes. It's almost got that professional feel of a docu-series where you highlight drivers. And Chris, you're kind of the face behind that. Is that correct? Kind of tell us your connection and tell us about Toledo Air Media and everything that you do, and take it away.
Yeah, so I guess to answer that question, I'll give you a little bit of history. So we have been working with the National Tractor Pulling Championships in BG since 2017. They brought us in at a time, and when I say us, I mean my company. They brought us in to kind of bring their media presence up to modern day, to modernize everything that they were doing from a marketing standpoint, from a media standpoint. And we kind of had a unique perspective because we don't come from the polling world. A little bit of background on myself. I actually grew up 20 minutes from BG, never went to BG one time. I knew it existed, but I was unfamiliar with the sport of truck and tractor pulling. Just kind of knew what the event was because it is just so big. Anybody that lives around here knows the tractor pulls. My business partner, though, he had gone to BG once as a kid, but that was the extent of our experience with BG prior to 2017. So my team, we walked into BG, and that's when we started capturing content for them. But our goal being, let's modernize what they do. We started with bringing in some new media and things like that. And one of the goals I always had was, to me, everybody in the polling world knows about polling. But I think what I always told the board in BG, I always said, you guys have a PR problem. You talk about yourselves a lot to the people that know polling, but you don't talk to people outside of the polling world. And I mean, that was very apparent to us because we weren't from the polling world and we knew very little about BG. So that became our solitary mission in working with the board there at the NTPC, was how do we grow not only this event, but grow the entire sport as a whole. So This wasn't a new idea for us or anything, or a new idea to the world. We actually took a lot of inspiration from Hard Knocks on HBO, which, if you're not familiar,
Yeah.
is a series that
Yeah.
follows behind the NFL training camp.
The
Well,
minute you say that, man, it feels identical. Like that's so funny. I mean, because if that's what you're going for, you hit it right on the nose. That's yeah.
Well, back when we started this idea and we originally brought it up to the board, there wasn't a lot of this type of content out there. So Hard Knocks was really the example that we pulled from. But what really made it click for us as a team was when we saw Drive to Survive, which is a similar series focused on F1. I'm a big F1 fan. So when I saw Drive to Survive, it all clicked because it was finally something, a piece of content in line with that behind the scenes documentary style, but it was motorsports related. And now this segment of content has blown up. I mean, now we have the NASCAR one, we've got a PGA one, there's a professional bull riders have one. This content has just exploded over the last 3 or 4 years. And as I always tell everybody, this content and this type of content has become so popular because people want to see it. And so for us with Behind the Hook, the goal was everybody sees the product on the track. And when you watch our episodes, you're going to see plenty of that track action. But what you're also going to see is you're going to see what these people do. What do these people do when they're not on the track? What do they do to be able to afford this? What is their life like? Here you see in Joe Ader's episode there. And, not surprisingly, a lot of these pullers are in agriculture, but we do have some surprises too. Travis Schlaubaugh, he's not in agriculture at all. So that's what we wanted to do with Behind the Hook, was start telling the stories of these pullers, and that's where we are. We're 2 seasons into this. Every year we try to make it bigger and better. Season 3 is in pre-production right now, and the board is actually going to be selecting the teams for season 3 this week. So
so this is, you say that you don't have a lot of background in truck and tractor pulling, and yet you have the right nose and the right eye for how to make these things happen. Because what stuck out to me when I watched season 1 and then started perusing through season 2, you went right for the who's who. Did someone kind of say, hey, these are the drivers that you want to ask, or did you kind of just get that feel walking the pits? You went for Shane Kellogg, the Theobalds, Joe Ader, I believe Schmuckers were in there. Is that correct? The Fosters, you got Carmen Foster and Rob Foster in there a little bit. You kind of went straight to the top. I mean, you picked, it would be the equivalent, in my opinion, of showing up at an NHRA race 10, 15 years ago and being like, I don't know anything about drag racing, but that John Force guy, he looks kind of cool. Let's see if he wants to interview with us. Who put you in the direction, or was this just something that you sensed as you were moving around, like, hey, these are some of the big names. Let's see if we can get these guys on.
So like I said, we've been working with BG since 2017. So just being around the event for, at that point, our first season was in 2022. So we were 5 years into the event. So when I say we came into working with BG with zero experience, 1 year in BG is a crash course. Everything after that, you start to see familiar faces, but the selection process itself for the teams is kind of a back and forth between the board and us. So they bring choices to the table essentially, and then we kind of go through those choices. We look for diversity, so we don't just want everybody in the same class. That's a big thing for us. So we want different classes. We want people with different stories, different geographical regions, things like that. So we don't like, everybody loves pro stock, but we like to have some different classes in there, So this season, at some point we're probably going to start repeating classes. We just want people that have great stories, and we want to tell those stories.
Yeah, I think it's great, and Chris, thanks for being on here. It's kind of fun because your perspective is from the outside world, right? And as you mentioned, everybody that's in pulling knows pulling. And then there's a few that are like me that kind of got adopted by pulling. And so I've tried to make it a point to bring in people that maybe have never seen it before, make it more personable. And what you're doing is just fantastic work. An announcer can do so much, but then to have the camera views and then put the people behind the fire suits and the helmets and see what those people are and what they're doing. It's just excellent. And it translates well. So keep it up. I mean, just a compliment from this side, because it's cool. I haven't been to Bowling Green yet, and I can watch these and feel like at least part of it is there. Of course, the party aspect stays at home, but no, very, very cool.
Well, thanks so much. And I know, Behind the Hook really is about following the journey of 3 teams up until this point, 3 teams per season, on their journey up to BG and then through BG. But really what the whole idea behind it is, we want to grow the sport, because if we grow the sport as a whole, obviously BG being the premier event is going to grow as well. So everything else that, we do, and that kind of seeps into everything that we do, because we really are the media partner for the National Tractor Pulling Championships. So Behind the Hook is one piece of the puzzle that we do. So pretty much if you follow their Facebook page or any of their social media accounts, 99% of that content is produced by our company. So, aside from a few random posts here and there by the directors, everything that we're putting out there is things that we've captured or at the event or year round. So now this is a year round project for us to promote a 3-day event. We're working year round. And now Behind the Hook is just another piece of that puzzle to help grow BG, but then obviously the sport as a whole. And I know that's, I've mentioned it already, but the background not coming from the polling world, we found that as an asset, because we came in with no preconceived notions of anything. Our first look at everything was how the real world outside of polling would see it. So we've spent a lot of time. Now we kind of straddle that line. We put a lot of effort into promoting it on the inside as well, but now a lot of the content that we put out there, we're trying to get it in front of people that aren't necessarily polling fans per se.
So I kind of have this opinion, and I think everything that you're hitting on here comes full circle and really hits on this. I talk about pulling entering what I call kind of the third generation. We're in the third generation pullers. We had the 60s, 70s, early 80s where the sport was kind of becoming developed and really growing its roots for its modern day. And then that kind of segued into the second generation and the glory days of truck and tractor pulling, the late 80s, mid early 90s, early 2000s. And a lot of those people pulling were, the literal second generation of the original pullers. And now we're on to what the third generation of pulling. Here we are 2 decades into the 2000s. We've got a lot of young pullers and a lot of young pulling fans. There's 2 things I've noticed in your videos, and that's highlighting the way that tractor pulling is no longer this county fair, especially at this level. It's not just, a John Deere bee pulling a dead weight sled, while they're judging pigs across the way. I think that Theobald said that, this is not a redneck sport. And you're talking about how you walked in and within moments you realized tractor pulling is marketing to tractor pulling. And you were like, if this is going to grow, this has to be marketed. You can't announce just to the fans in the stand who already know everybody's last name and know all the points races. The first thing that you were able to pick up on like that was, we've got to take it to this third generation, this way of the younger crowd, the younger people, the larger audience. And I think that it's proving that the sport is growing beyond what we had it in our head that it was 40 years ago. And the fact that was apparent to you that quickly comes out in your videos. And I think that's why the videos have exploded and done so well for you guys and for the sport.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the other thing that we did too was we came in and we tried to find comparables, and obviously a lot of those comparables were motorsports. It makes sense if you like certain types of motorsports, you could likely be interested in tractor pulling. So, we looked at what the NHRA was doing. We looked heavily at what NASCAR is doing, not because it's a direct comparable, but I do believe a lot of people that would be interested in NASCAR would also be interested in tractor pulling. So we said that to the board when we first started working with them. If you want to be the pinnacle of truck and tractor pulling, look no further for examples of what you should do than the pinnacle of any other motorsport. So that's why we look at what NASCAR does. We look at NHRA. We look at IndyCar, F1, things like that, because they're at the top of their motorsports. So if they're doing it, there's probably a good reason they're doing it, and we can take a little bit of that.
Kind of the why not us attitude. If this is what NASCAR and NHRA is seeking to do, why not pulling as well? Why not hit it there? Did you feel that you got quite a bit of crossover when you started taking it to those other demographics, which are very comparable demographic markets? But did you notice a lot of your F1 or NASCAR fans or drag racing fans kind of following what you guys had created with Behind the Hook and kind of getting hooked on pulling a little bit more? Did you dive into those audiences, and did you bring them over a little bit?
So the first season was, let's just get this concept off the ground. Let's produce a good season as a proof of concept, but a workable proof of concept. So that's what we did with season 1. Season 2 was, okay, let's start to refine the idea a little bit more. And now we're starting to put it out there. Now that we have a little bit of a base of content, now our goal is like, let's get this in front of more people now. So season 3 is going to be another step further. Okay, how do we get this in front of more people? When we created this first season, we had nothing to show people. We just had, hey, we're creating this thing. It's going to be exciting. But when you don't have something to show somebody, it's hard for them to get excited about it. Now we have 2 seasons of content here. Now we're really going to start to dig into this. And we have such great support from the board in BG. They believe in us. They have a lot of trust in what we do. And every season that we give them, they're just blown away even more. And that's really what we're doing. So we want to make sure the content, even though we want to market this outside of polling, we want to make sure the content resonates with the polling community, number one, because then we're representing them well. Then we can take it out beyond the polling world. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're in that transition period now. Season 3 will be the step when we really take that. But I see on Kenzie's screen over there, Travis's episode playing. And one thing that really struck me with Travis, which is not uncommon with all of these teams, a lot of the people that know these folks and these families where they come from, they have no idea that they are the top level professional sports people that they are, especially Travis. The one lady, Corrine, that we talked to there, she's the economic development director for the town that he lives in. And she had no idea. Like, I asked her, do you know what Travis does on the weekends? Do you know that he is like at the top level of a motorsport and competes and has won, and he's been a grand national champion? No, I had no idea. I mean, and that's what I mean when I say the polling community has a PR problem. Everybody, and it's not always, that's nothing against Travis. It's because he's very humble. He's not out there telling everybody, hey, look at this. Look at all this money I spend on this. Look at all these things that I've won and how good I do. But really, that's what we have embraced at this point, is let's tell those stories, because if you're any sort of a motorhead, you're going to be interested in this sport because it's amazing. The amount of power that these machines put down is just insane. So if we tell those stories, people are going to want to listen to them.
Yeah, and I think it's a reflection too of a building of an understanding. And this is something that when I start from the ground up to educate people with truck and tractor pulling, it's understanding the different levels that this sport can exist and understanding just the amount of hype that is warranted when it is being performed at its top level. Now, at every single level, of course, we support that and we're all about that. But when you are talking national tractor pulling championships at Bowling Green, Ohio, at a super national pulling for grand national points, teams that are millions of dollars invested, This is the Daytona 500, you know, of truck and tractor pulling. And I'm of the strong opinion that it's also not a one shoot thing. Like, this is the Daytona 500, but you know, we've got a couple Bristols and we've got a couple Talladegas and Charlottes, you know, and Martinsvilles too. I mean, there's a lot of it. So when you go to Travis's hometown and you're like, hey, did you know that he pulls tractors? A lot of people have this kind of common image of, you know, the back in the day, out of the farm. Oh, you know, good for him. What are you getting excited about? Well, you know, sure, beating and banging stock car racing existed too, but there's also the Daytona 500. And I think kind of using that analogy and getting people to understand the level at which the sport can grow to. And I think that's what, like, you're trying to show the world. And I think the videos show that very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a big, one of the goals with it obviously is entertainment, but really education is what we're going for. And that becomes apparent because, unlike when you say NASCAR, people know what you're talking about, whether they're a fan or not. When you say truck and tractor pulling, people do not. It's become very obvious to us that they have no, I mean, we get everything from, yeah, I know what that is. The two tractors, they hook together and then they hook a chain between them and they pull each other back and forth. And that's what people think. I mean, people really have no idea what this sport is about. So it's just that's our biggest hurdle is kind of educating. But it's a fine line because we are producing this, obviously, like I said, season 1 and season 2, primarily for the pulling community. So these are people that already know. So we have to walk a fine line of how much education versus entertainment, because we'll lose the pulling community proper if we focus too much on everybody that isn't already a fan.
Yeah, and there's not a ton of middle ground either. You know, that you have the ones that sink their teeth into it. You know, I've got my 5-year-old can come up here and rattle off, you know, 15 different drivers, and that's how they are. We are people who just grew up with it, you know, for whatever reason. And I know too that I used to watch some productions back in the day, and they would almost strive for education, but to the point where as a diehard fan, you almost feel like you're being pandered to. And you're like, okay, like, yep, I know that thing's called a sled. Like, you know, yep, I've heard of that before. And so you're walking a razor thin edge there to keep us who are, you know, thirsty for content and will eat it up left and right, but then also bringing in all the new markets, because you can't only market to us because we're a very limited few. And until it grows, then what you're doing and what we're here at Let's Grow Pulling are doing, it becomes almost too much of a niche audience. So you have a tough task, but I'm not a production guy. I just know your videos are freaking cool. So that's
what we go for. I mean, we wanted to tell the stories, number one, but number two, we wanted to bring production quality into this sport. There is some other, you know, good production that's done out there, but really we felt that was an area where we could help the sport as well, because, you know, bringing good production quality, which takes time and it takes money. So that's why not a lot of it exists. That's why when you look at something like NASCAR or F1, they're full of money. They're flush with money. They can afford to create all of this dynamic content, you know, endless streams of content. So that's part of, you know, our mission as well, is we need to try to play with the big dogs, but we need to do it on a much more modest budget. So that's always, we're trying to walk that fine line of keeping the pulling community happy, but also giving content that is at least digestible to the outside the pulling world. But then also, you know, doing as much as we can when we don't have endless budgets like those much larger motorsports.
Chris, what do you see? You know, you're talking about season 3, making that transition. This thing's growing. It's popular. We're talking about it here. You know, what's the big ideas going forward? I mean, is there something you can let us in on? You know, where's the change? Where do you see this thing growing to, or hopeful? You know, can you speak to that just a little bit if you haven't already?
Yeah, I think, you know, one of our goals is taking this maybe farther than YouTube,
That's
getting
what
it
I was
onto some
wondering.
streaming platforms. That's
Mhm.
one thing that we're looking at. As soon as you step into the streaming platform world, you're going to automatically open yourself up to some other audiences. But you've got other considerations involved with that. Not to get too far into the technical realm, but a lot of these platforms, you need to film with certain types of cameras. There's length considerations on the actual content itself. There's all these new stipulations that instead of creating exactly what we want, we now have to create exactly what we want, but within this huge list of parameters. So it becomes another challenge that we put in front of ourselves. So the big thing that we're doing is every season, let's make it better. And to your point, what does better mean? Well, if you watch season 1 and then compare that to season 2, you start to see we dig in a lot farther into the home life of these teams. Like, what are they doing outside of BG? Because, like I said, everybody sees that product on the track. Don't get me wrong. If you haven't watched the episodes, you'll see plenty of product on the track, but you'll also see a lot of those behind the scenes things. And that's, that might be at BG, that might be at another event entirely, or in large part, season 2, we started to focus a lot more on their home life. How do they afford to do what they do? And how does it work? What's it look like? So that's our next step, is digging into that a little bit more. But yeah, I know we're definitely going to be looking at ways. We already are looking at other platforms to help build the audience in front of some people that don't already see it.
Well, that's great. Yeah. And then when you talk about the people, that's the biggest thing. Is I always talk about the fire suits and the helmets. You see the machine, people root for the machine, but sometimes having that home story for somebody, it creates that, maybe hero mentality or, villain even. There's that personality. You talked about NASCAR. It's got it. Everybody's, you're an Earnhardt fan forever, right? You're going to hate the other guy. Well, even if you really hate them or not, it creates some energy within the sport, which is good. So, that's huge. That's really exciting to see. How can people check out more of your productions? What's your website to help us out there? Let's go ahead and point it to that.
Yes. So as a whole, we're a creative and technical drone service company that also now is a complete production studio. So if anybody wants to find out anything about what we do as a company, because we do a lot more than just truck or tractor pulling, we are tam.com is where they can find us. But yeah, I mean, we're super excited about this community. We've been welcomed in and definitely helping these teams that we've now covered through 2 seasons. They are the superstars of the sport, and they don't get a lot of that, out in front of people other than at actual events live in person. So this has been kind of a transition for those teams too. And, that's what kind of another goal of Behind the Hook was. It's like, okay, let's take these people that are the superstars of their sport and let's put them on a pedestal now. And that's not because they're asking for it, but if you look at any of those other series that I mentioned, what do? They put the superstars on a pedestal and put them in front of people because they want, this is the pinnacle of our sport. If BG's the pinnacle event, these people are the pinnacle competitors, and we want people to know the people that play parts in the sport because it helps us tell the stories.
And telling the story as opposed to just filming and laying out the competition is integral. Pulling, I've always felt, can be a very tricky sport to put on television. If you watch a baseball game, 2 teams, 9 innings, you don't have to know anything to understand that. If you watch the Daytona 500, 1 set of cars, X amount of laps, winner wins. But pulling can go for 5, 6 hours, 5 sessions, 13 classes, each getting 2 hooks, 2 tracks, with a plethora of different rules and inspiration for each separate class. that can be really tough to then condense into a nice, manageable hour and a half, ESPN worthy time slot. So instead of doing just, hey, here's, pulling, if you're taking it in that direction, telling stories and removing the helmets, that works well. That works really well, in my opinion. So, but yeah. Hey, before we send you out of here, and thank you so much. This has been a ton of fun. You've been an awesome interview. If your lips are sealed tight, you can seal them tight. But I know what every commenter on here is dancing around on the keyboards. Can you hint, maybe give us some color or rhymes with any season 3 teams that we might be hanging out with in season 3? And like I said, if that smile is tight, then keep it under lock and key. But I know everyone's curious. Can we get any teasers?
Well, it's a valiant effort there, Mike, but I'm not I got to give it to you. That was good, but I'm not going to spill any beans because, like I said, the board, that we have their trust. I'm not going to put anything out there that they don't want out there. So sorry, but not this time.
To all our viewers, hey, I did my due diligence. I laid it on as thick as I could. A couple of commenters on here, Travis, who I had the pleasure of interviewing at the farm show too, and is just a salt to the earth, amazing human being, says they were honored to be selected last year and says you guys do an incredible job. You talk about pinnacle competitors, and he is one. So that's wonderfully high praise coming from him. Chris,
he was great to work with.
And I'd be remiss too if I didn't give Keith Seiler a shout out. He was another amazing interview that I did at the farm show. And I know that I imagine you and he probably worked together quite a bit. Anybody that you need to thank or any shout outs that you need to give before we let you carry on with your Monday night?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I want to say thank you to the fans. Everybody, if you've clicked play on one of these episodes, if you've hit share, if you've commented, if you've done any of that, thank you. That's all we ask of you, is just keep sharing the content that we put out there. It helps us grow this series, and we're going to keep bringing you more as long as you keep giving us the great feedback. Next I want to thank the board. None of this would be possible without the board from the National Tractor Pulling Championships. Like I said, you mentioned Keith, Dave, and the rest of the guys over there. Really, without them and the trust that they've put into us, and we bring them some crazy ideas, and this started as one of those crazy ideas years ago, and we kept pushing on it, and we said, we believe in this idea. This is going to be something, and they put their trust in us, so can't thank them enough for that. That really is a blessing for this project that they continue to support it. They are the biggest supporters of the project. And other than that, just my team. We put so many hours behind the hook specifically, other than everything else that we do for BG. Behind the Hook has now pretty much become a year-round project. So by the time right now we're in pre-production, we'll move into production in the next 2 months or so. And then through the end of the year, then we're in active production. And, once BG ends, then we're in post-production for the rest of the year until we release episodes. So can't thank the team enough for all the work that goes into it.
Oh, really cool. Chris, thank you so much for being on tonight. What you guys are doing is fantastic. Can't wait to see the next season so we can finally find out who those drivers might be. Right, Mike?
That's one of those things. And pulling loves that. But it's almost better to not know, because this is what we'll do driving to every pull all summer is we'll chew on it and debate it and, have that. But yeah, getting to see the drivers list, getting to see the ones behind it. And, these are people that we idolize. These are people that we worship. Keep pulling back the mask, keep behind the hook, and keep letting us see it. You guys are doing amazing things for the world of truck and tractor pulling. All I can say is thank you and keep it up.
Thanks so much, everybody. I really appreciate it. And you won't have to wait too long on those teams. Like last year, we did a little reveal video to at least give people an idea. So just hang in there a little while longer. We'll get you something before not too long.
We're in it for the long haul. Hey, man, you've been awesome. Thank you so much. Keep up the great work. It's just too cool for school, bud.
Mm.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Really appreciate it.
You
Thank
got
you,
it, Chris.
Chris.
Have a good night, man. Thanks for being here.
You too. Bye.
Oh, that's
Oh,
cool, man. That is
yeah.
cool. I got to rewatch some of that because when you talk about the Hard Knocks, I spent a little bit of time watching that, being a
Mhm.
football fan, right? And then it's like to see the production and things. It's like, whoa, there's something
They're-
to this. So I'm
They're
excited to
gonna
see those names.
you can tell they're gonna be on Netflix or Discovery or something. I mean, you can just kind of tell that's the style that they're pushing. So to all our fans out there, I sent out I did as many reels as I could. I'm learning. I am not the social media guy. Like if you're out here and you're watching Let's Grow Pulling, like I watch tractor pulls and I talk, and that's all I've done my whole life. And I just happen to accidentally get in front of a camera, and Kinsey and Jason have had to deal with me ever since. But I've been trying to do some more social media. I've been trying to make posts. I'm learning that as I go. And one of the things I kept telling people was Josh Blackburn. He's turning into our Matt Damon. Josh Blackburn will be on. I promise. He wants to be on. He didn't make it on last Monday. He's not able to be on this Monday. He's he's vacationing. He said his wife would kill him. He goes, you can't go pulling and vacationing at the same time. I get it. I completely get it. Josh Blackburn will be on at some point, but he's not going to be on tonight. But instead, we're going to talk Keystone Nationals. Is that our next guest, Kinsey?
Yes, she
We're
is.
Gonna
Look
meet
at that
with-
segue. Jess is there right when you brought her up. Hello, Jess.
Good
Hi,
time.
guys.
How are
How's
you this
everything
evening?
going?
I'm doing well. How are you all?
We are awesome. So you are here to speak with us about, and I'm going to say this, I think I've been saying it wrong, so correct me immediately. Is it just Keystone Nationals or is it Keystone